Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's issues. I'm your host, Brian Krull, and today I'm going to be teaching you all about narcissism in this extreme deep dive into the topic. For all those of you out there who are very passionate about psychology, this video should be right up your alley. But first, before you forget, could you just hit that like button for me? That really helps. Now, narcissism is a medical personality disorder, and so in order to properly define it for you, since I myself am not a medical doctor and I'm just a mere researcher, I'm going to call upon the writings of actual medical doctors on the subject and quote them. Narcissism is described by WebMD and peer-reviewed by Dr. Dan Brennan as such. Quote, narcissism is extreme self-involvement to the degree that it makes a person ignore the needs of those around them. While everyone may show occasional narcissistic behavior, true narcissists frequently disregard others or their feelings. They also do not understand the effect that their behavior has on other people. It's important to note that narcissism is a trait, but it can also be a part of a larger personality disorder. Not every narcissist has Narcissistic Personality Disorder, or NPD, as narcissism is a spectrum. People who are at the highest end of the spectrum are those that are classified as having NPD, but others still with narcissistic traits, may fall on the lower end of the spectrum. People who show signs of narcissism can often be very charming and charismatic. They often don't show negative behavior right away, especially in relationships. People who show narcissism often like to surround themselves with people who feed into their ego. They build relationships to reinforce their ideas about themselves, even if these relationships are superficial. Now, there are two different types of narcissism that narcissistic behaviors can fall under. The two types can have common traits, but come from different childhood experiences. The two types also dictate the different ways people will behave in their relationships. The first is grandiose narcissism. People with this behavior were most likely treated as if they were superior or above others during their childhood. These expectations can follow them as they become adults. They tend to brag and be elitist. Those with grandiose narcissism are aggressive, dominant, and exaggerate their importance. They are very self-confident and aren't sensitive. Then there's vulnerable narcissism. This behavior is usually the result of childhood neglect or abuse. People with this behavior are much more sensitive. Narcissistic behavior helps to protect them against feelings of inadequacy. Even though they go between feeling inferior and superior to others, they feel offended or even anxious when others don't treat them as if they are special. So that comes from an article by WebMD on narcissism symptoms, which you can find linked below. Well, moving on, there are 9 traits that are used to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder. Dr. John P. Cunha at emedicine.com has detailed them as such. Symptoms of narcissism, or the core features of NPD, include 1. Grandiosity, which is an exaggerated sense of self-importance and feeling superior to others and that one deserves special treatment. It has these feelings that are often accompanied by fantasies of success and brilliance, power, and great beauty, or having the love life of their dreams or something like that. And then second is an excessive need for admiration. They must be the center of attention. They often monopolize conversations, and NPD patients will often feel slighted, mistreated, depleted, and even enraged when they are ignored. Third is superficial and exploitative relationships. These relationships are based on surface-level attributes and not the unique qualities of others, meaning their romantic interest in a partner comes only from his looks and his status and wealth, all right, not from who he is as a person. Sound familiar? And people are only valued by narcissists to the extent that they are beneficial or are seen as beneficial. And then 4 is a lack of empathy. They are severely limited or even lacking completely in the ability to care about the emotional needs or experiences of others, even their loved ones. And then 5 is an identity disturbance. The narcissist's sense of self is highly superficial and extremely rigid and fragile often. Their self-stability depends on maintaining the view that they are exceptional. Their grandiose sense of self is easily threatened, and they tend to retreat from or deny realities that challenge their grandiose sense of identity. 6 is difficulty with attachment and dependency. They rely on feedback from the environment, or in other words, external validation. Their relationships only exist to shore up a positive self-image of themselves. All of their interactions are superficial. They avoid intimacy, and yet they also tend to have codependent relationships because their relationships are based entirely on social utility. And then 7 is chronic feelings of emptiness and boredom. When attention and praise are not available, NPD patients feel empty, bored, depressed, or restless. Kind of reminds me of all those narcissistic women who take to social media fishing for compliments and complaining about how bored they are. Yeah. Then 8 is vulnerability to life transitions. Narcissists have difficulty maintaining reality-based personal and professional goals over time. When compromises are required by schools, jobs, and relationships, which cause them to feel as though, their life has changed significantly, it may feel unbearable. And young adults who have NPD may have what is called the failure to launch. And then lastly, number 9, NPD is a significant risk factor for suicide and suicide attempts. And that comes from emedicine.com, which you can check out with the link there below. But now the symptoms do not even stop there. Narcissists have a wide array of narcissistic behaviors that you can look out for, which will tell you very clearly that you are dealing with a narcissist. I've done extensive research on this topic and compiled a list of all of the most common narcissistic behaviors to watch out for that will help you to detect when you are dealing with one. Narcissism is a superiority complex, so they act like they are superior because they believe that they are, and that they are unique and special, etc. So they may act like they feel they deserve special treatment and consideration that they do not extend to others. They may have a certain air of grandiosity or a grandiose manner about them, acting larger than life at times, perhaps even audacious or pompous maybe. They will act condescending towards others and can get arrogant and pretentious as well, and may come outright and talk about how they are better than others, even going as far as to belittle and disparage others and treat those who they see as lower than them in status or power poorly. And of course, this leads to entitlement, acting as though they are entitled to things that they aren't actually. That they have a higher status than they actually do and expect others to submit to or supplicate to them. Sound familiar? Yeah. Something we men have to deal with constantly from women. And demanding special treatment that she does not give others, being non-egalitarian. Expecting to be entertained and wined and dined on dates without bringing anything to the table herself. Acting like some kind of princess or queen when they aren't even close to being that high class. But it may lead them to treat others like their own personal servants. And they can actually fool some people into believing their entitlement because of the next thing, which is their presentation. They present very well. They are either attractive or know how to make themselves seem more attractive than they actually are through the art of proper presentation, because the most important thing to them is their public image. So they put a lot of time and energy into it. In fact, they're often very overly concerned with their appearance and obsessed with their self-image and how others perceive and think about them. Though part of this leads them to actually believing they are far more attractive than they actually are. Like when a girl who is average, like a 5 out of 10, thinks she's actually a 15,000. And when you tell her she isn't, she gets upset. So upset that she fucking charges at you and tackles you. Something that I saw in one of these street interview videos. A woman literally said she thinks she's a 15,000. And when the guy told her, I think, he said, you're just like a 5 or something, she fucking tackled him. So that is clear narcissism right there. And that leads me to the next thing, which is that they are overly concerned with and sensitive to the scrutiny and criticism of others and will react very badly to it. They absolutely must feel as though others look upon them fondly, or it triggers intense insecurities, which is what the root cause of narcissism is based in. They are plagued by self-doubt and insecurity, so they tend to avoid anything that threatens their sense of self-esteem, and they overcompensate for their insecurities by putting a lot of effort into presenting well and trying to court favor and admiration from others for their sense of validation, as they are externally validated, not internally. Which leads to them doing the next thing, which is feeling threatened by and often getting defensive towards any disagreement, and not being able to take any sort of negative feedback or constructive criticism well, even when it is gentle and polite. Sound familiar? Yeah. This is because of the next thing, which is that they have poor emotional regulation, as well as regulation of their own sense of self-esteem. And so they're constantly doing the next thing, which is seeking validation and fishing for attention and accolades. They have a serious need for recognition and praise. It's an addiction to them. And they can train themselves to be very charming and charismatic, smooth talkers who say all of the right things. And thus, that leads to the next sign, which is that they are social butterflies and may have very active social lives and a very large social network. And though they are very friendly people and have many acquaintances, they don't have very many close friendships. All right, though they are able to do the following, which is to surround themselves with yes men and supporters and sycophants who give them the validation and support that they need. In narcissism, this is what is called enlisting behavior. See, they are great at rallying and campaigning and lobbying others for their self-interests, all right, which is why you often find them in politics, or if not that, then sales and marketing. And that is because of the next thing, which is that they need to be the center of attention and will always steal the limelight whenever they can. They are the life of the party, sure, but that's a problem sometimes when it is not their party. And narcissists are masters of manipulation, though if you understand it, and the different types of manipulation tactics that can be employed by them, which I've taught about in a couple previous videos, so make sure you've seen those, then you should be able to notice most of, or at least much of, the manipulation that they attempt. And they are expert liars. They lie effortlessly and almost compulsively and pathologically, and may lie about anything and everything, and they will never admit it, even when caught, and will tell you that you didn't see something you saw them do, or something like that, and gaslight you rather than admitting the truth. And make sure you've seen my video on gaslighting too, so you don't let someone like this drive you insane trying to get you to believe in a falsehood. They can do this because their lying is pathological, and they will actually brainwash themselves into believing their own lies so that they can act accordingly, as with method acting. They use their words to attempt to create a new reality based upon what they want reality to be. They are very deceptive people, for they not only deceive others, but their own selves as well. And one way they do this is through agreeability and mirroring. That means mirroring back to you things that they have observed you do, or things they've observed are important to you, in an effort to build rapport. All right, so they may be mirroring back to you your own body language, or they may be mirroring back to you your own actual language, and just, being agreeable, while inside they may actually be thinking something quite opposite and actually plotting against you. So beware of those who try to agree with everything you say, yes men, and people who try to become fast friends with you by trying to make themselves seem very like you. Narcissists are highly superficial and focused on money and things like glitz and glam, which stems from money issues and leads to their rampant consumerism. So that is a huge sign of narcissism, and something that most modern women are guilty of. Narcissists are also guilty of perfectionism and have extremely unrealistically high and rigid standards for both themselves and others. Narcissists are highly critical of others and may make you feel like nothing you do is ever good enough for them, and everything must be perfect or else, which is ironic because they themselves are very sensitive to criticism. They are also stubborn. It is her way or the highway. She will bend for no one, even if she really should, and has been proven wrong. But, at that point, it's a matter of principle, the principle being their ego. Because, that is really the only principle that they have. And they also have very high standards. also sound familiar? Most women these days say that they have very high standards. And for narcissists, what this means is that they have a high level of double standards. They are hypocrites and demand the world of others, but deliver on nothing themselves. Their word is really meaningless. And that is because they have identity issues, meaning that they have a lack of identity, or maybe an inconsistent sense of identity, or that they have, come to think of themselves as being larger than life, but then are constantly faced with not being able to live up to their own expectations of who they are, and go through what is called a narcissistic collapse. And they also will commonly paint a picture of themselves and who they are to others that make themselves seem extremely grandiose. So those are the signs of a narcissistic identity. And they may be very good storytellers, but are also very hyperbolic and will exaggerate their storytelling a lot, especially when speaking about themselves. They may brag a lot and tend to exaggerate things about themselves in order to make themselves seem bigger and better than others, like, the people who are listening. Like with telling grandiose stories about their achievements, the types, we call them, the fish stories, the war stories, stuff like that. And this is because they have fantasies of success and power, which are actually just unrealistic delusions of grandeur that are never, going to happen because they're not rooted in reality. And ironically, while they have delusions of grandeur and fantasies of power, at the same time, they're also experts at playing the victim. And narcissists make themselves seem as though they suffer more than anyone, even though they may actually live in very cushy little bubbles on top of ivory towers. So think Meghan Markle and women like that, who are professional victims, who have mastered the art of complaining and whining. They will oftentimes have a woe is me type of disposition, which women use against men to appear like a damsel in distress who needs help. And of course, as victims, you are not allowed to victim blame them, because the victim card trumps any blaming and passes it. So whenever they could be found at fault for something, they will always try to pass the blame to someone else. They are also plagued by depression and anxiety and other negative emotions such as jealousy and paranoia. They have many mental health issues, including a highly fluctuating sense of self-esteem and anger issues, often causing them to blow up about small things. They also cannot be relied upon. They have no sense of commitment, no sense of reciprocity, will constantly flake on obligations. And again, this is something that most modern women do because they are narcissistic. They also have a tendency towards shaming others. Narcissists love shaming language and trying to put others down and guilt trip them or make them feel bad about themselves. It makes the narcissist feel better about herself. Narcissists are very gossipy and love talking about others behind their backs and forming cliques and rivalries among coworkers and people in her social network. And they have little respect for others. They will often act with a total disregard for others' feelings, time, energy, engagements, and obligations, etc. Everything is about them, not you. They have no regard for boundaries, so they may often violate them, such as violating your personal space, violating your privacy, asking inappropriate personal questions about you, and prodding you for personal details, which is often data mining you for any information that might be useful in manipulating and exploiting you, and may even use inappropriate touching and physical contact, such as violence or unwanted sexual touching, as narcissists have no sexual boundaries and are very outwardly sexual people, but more on that later. Because they have no boundaries, they don't understand them and how they are supposed to work. So they may make social faux pas at times and do things that are inappropriate. And they may also be extremely secretive or overshare at different times, without realizing that they are seeming secretive or that they are oversharing. All right. And they can tend to be either passive aggressive or just downright aggressive and be pushy and domineering and even bullying, and will do whatever it takes to get others to submit to their will. They have a flair for drama, and even if they say they hate it and try to avoid it, they are constantly creating it. And even if they don't admit that they are the ones creating it and may deny it up and down, it sure does seem to follow them wherever they go. This is because even if they do not realize that they enjoy drama, they are triggered easily and have little to no emotional control and are comfortable with conflict, or they actually get off on it. And they certainly can't stand the feeling of boredom, so it is very feasible that they would create drama in order to, have a sense of excitement. And some of them actually enjoy creating trouble and are troublemakers, just like a troubled teen might be, because narcissists are children who never entirely matured and grew up mentally. So you may notice immature seeming emotions or behaviors, or even subtle mannerisms, like their tone of voice or the way they say certain things, which they may do in a way that seems, very girlish and cutesy, even though, they are not a young girl, they're an older adult woman. You see, this is because they are incapable of psychological growth and change. And so, like a bratty child, they also can tend to act in extremely dominant and authoritarian ways, but they also have issues with authority and people who have it over them, and can tend to be rebellious when it comes to people who have authority over them. They do not respect authority because they do not like the idea that people are above them and can tell them what to do. So they can tend to lash out at authority figures and rebel against them, even police officers, when being given orders. And this is because, due to their Napoleon complex, they have an intense reaction to any perceived powerlessness, inferiority, shame, or anything of that nature, like embarrassment. Anyone who knocks them down a few pegs, makes them feel less than, could cause them to flip out at you and even lose it and become abusive towards you. But even though they have issues with authority, they are attracted to power, professionally, politically, and of course sexually, especially for women. They look for powerful people to partner with who they can exploit the status of and gain social utility from, basically empower themselves through the power of. They are competitive and have a need to win any competition and to always trump others, often turning things into competitions when they are not. And they also don't give credit where credit is due. They will get help from others and then steal the full credit, and even throw others who have helped them under the bus in order to get ahead and get promotions and such. And they may also enjoy publicly humiliating others, right? They don't just want to best you publicly, but they want to make you seem inferior to them in the eyes of others, and feel inferior to them yourself as well, because that is the only way they can make themselves feel superior. They have no conscience or sense of ethics or integrity or honor. They are amoral people with no moral compass or care for anything except getting what they want. And when it comes to the narcissist's sexuality, they can tend to be hypersexual, promiscuous, seductive, and capable of great sexual passion and making it seem as though you are actually, making love. And they are also very prone to sex addiction, as well as cheating. You see, narcissists are very sexual people and know how to use their sexuality to create connections and get others sexually addicted to them. They will make you into their literal love slave, which they don't only do by fucking you really good, but also by love bombing you and showering you with affections and creating these fast, deep feelings of intimacy, romanticizing the relationship quickly and strongly, and creating this sense of a sort of destiny that you two had together, right? Like you are meant to be together, or maybe even have a spiritual connection. They may even create this sense of being soulmates, when in reality, they have no real concept of what love even is, and are incapable of true love or a healthy love relationship. The romance with them is just a facade for the sake of seduction and manipulation, and the relationship, like them, is superficial and fake. though they can actually make you feel as though the relationship is deeper and more meaningful than anyone you've ever had before. But the truth is, you have no real connection with this person because there is no one really there for you to connect with. They do not have a real sense of identity, and the parts of themselves that they have shared with you have certainly all just been an act they've been putting on to manipulate you. Because this is what a narcissist does. They fast track relationships and commitments from men and manipulate obligations out of them, which are not mutual. And they are not loyal in the relationships to those who they demand loyalty from. All right, and any commitments and promises that they have made to you have all been lies. All right, and narcissists will make fantastic, unreal future projections, which is called future faking. All right, promising you that you are going to build a relationship and a life together and a family and do all of these wonderful things together and make all of your dreams come true together, and you're going to be partners and it's you two against the world, but it's all really just fake promises that are nothing more than lies, because they will never do the first thing on that list. It is all just meant to get you under their emotional control and dedicated to them in the ways they need you to be. So one really good sign to be able to tell if your relationship is with a narcissist is if your romance seems too good to be true. Because if it seems that way, that is exactly what it is. Because to them, it's all just been like sales or marketing, all right? It's all just emotional manipulation. And the only reason that it does feel like real love and intimacy and partnership and commitment and such is because they are actually needy people. So their relationships are codependent because they have attachment issues due to their insecurities. So they'll be constantly feeling insecure about the relationship and need constant reassurance of your devotion to them. Being apart from you will make them feel very disconnected from you and needy for you, and they will not want to spend much time apart and will be constantly calling you, asking you to come over, or texting you, asking for validation or whatever, or attention, unless they deal with their attachment issues by being avoidant, which would cause them to do the opposite and become very flaky and flighty and non-committal, and just basically be very unavailable to you, although they'll want you to be available to them whenever they need your attention and affection and such. And another sign of a romance with a narcissist is that when they are not love bombing you, they can tend to be emotionally cold and callous and dismissive or unavailable, and may seem numb or even act cruelly towards you and seem to have, a mean streak to them. And that's because they don't have much empathy, if any at all. And the empathy they do seem to have will be in short supply and only come out in specific situations with specific family members, people who are their closest to, and be short-lived, or may very often be fake and just an act that they're putting on because they know it's the right thing to do in that social situation. All right, but in fact, some narcissists actually get pleasure from causing others pain, which is called sadism. So that's why you really have to watch out for these people. And I'll be telling you all about sadism in the last video in the series, so you can watch out for that too. And narcissists may make you feel like you are walking on eggshells around them and worried about saying the wrong thing for fear of triggering them and being punished by some sort of tirade or diatribe that can easily lead to arguing and verbal abuse, because they have anger issues and will blow up at even the smallest perceived slight to their ego or even disagreement. And narcissists will punish you when you do something they don't like or don't give them what they want, and may even do it when you disagree with them, which they do by withdrawing their attention and affection and using emotional neglect and abandonment as a form of negative reinforcement to try to coerce you into being more compliant with their wishes and controlling you. And something you need to understand is that silent treatment is not healthy in a relationship. All right, if a woman is giving you silent treatment, that is emotional abuse. That is a sign of narcissism. And at times, their emotions may seem forced or off or incongruent at times, meaning their words and their tone and facial expression and manner or other behaviors and actions do not seem all entirely in alignment. So, for instance, they may express empathy in a situation where, it's the polite thing to do when they don't actually feel it. So it could come across as exaggerated or unnatural or fake, because it is. So use your intuition, which is easy when the next sign shows up, and that is that their words often don't match their actions. Their words don't mean what they say they mean. They often do not do the things they say they're going to do. They seem to make a lot of empty promises that they never come through on. They may apologize for something and say they're not going to do it again. It was just an accident or mistake. But then they keep repeating those same mistakes just to apologize and make the same empty promise and then repeat the cycle over and over as long as you'll allow. So again, if their words or actions do not match up and thus are incongruent, they cannot be trusted, all right? It is all a lie or manipulation. Similarly, you may notice that their private and public selves do not match up. That they seem to have a very different social persona when they are in front of other people and are in presentation mode, and are a completely different person when they are alone in a more personal setting, one-on-one with you. It's like they are wearing a mask, but not only that, they take it to a whole new level in that they create a entirely new avatar for themselves when they are with others. And also, they cannot seem to relate to or understand those who are different than them or too different than them, and thus they may treat them without compassion or even decency or humanity. They may not treat people who are too different than them as people at all. They will also tend to try to invalidate the core values of people who are different than them, or even your entire sense of self and identity and reality. They may even try to break you down at times, or even gaslight you and make you crazy, which they do by getting you to doubt your reality. And if you haven't seen my video on gaslighting, make sure you watch it, linked below, so that you can look out for that, because it is very destructive to your mental health. And all of their relationships are based upon how they can use and exploit others until they are all used up. And so they are also very transient. They are incapable of long-term relationships, and they will easily abandon and discard someone. In fact, they see everyone as disposable. Literally, everyone is expendable to them, no matter who you think you are to them or how special they've made you feel. And narcissists can tend to act in a sociopathic or even psychopathic manner, something I'm going to be talking about in the next video. So even if they've claimed to love you, you really have to watch out for these people, as they can be dangerous. So to conclude, when you notice any of these behaviors and tendencies, take them as a big, giant red flag and sign that you should turn around and run, as there is no having a healthy relationship with a narcissist. There's no cure for NPD, so they will never change. And what they really need is a therapist, not a boyfriend. And you cannot try to be both of those for them. Trust me, for the sake of your own mental health and livelihood, just get the fuck away from this person. I myself have gotten destroyed by plenty of narcissistic women before I learned this stuff, which I did so that I could stop the vicious circle that I was in. So just save yourself. The passionate sex that you're going to have with them simply isn't worth all of the evil that they are going to do to you. So that concludes this talk. I hope I explained that well enough for you guys out there. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share your own thoughts and opinions by commenting below. And if you have any experiences to share of relationships with narcissists that you have had, be sure to share those stories below as well. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and share these messages with everyone by sharing the video on social media and talking about these things too. And lastly, check out the links in the description below for other resources for your masculine personal development, living the life you want to as an independent man. And if you can afford to donate, please do so with the PayPal link below, because your support funds me doing this work and fighting the good fight for men like you. And you can stay tuned for the next video coming out soon, which will be on sociopathy and psychopathy, or in other words, antisocial personality disorder. And make sure you're subscribed so you'll be notified when that is. And until then, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.